Greetings, brothers and sisters. This is Sister Sonia here at Last Remnants of God's Army. Thank you so much for joining me here today on this channel. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Brothers and sisters, we are going to give you an update on the World News Report as things are spiraling out of control. The United States is sending out a drafting bill to get your kids as young as 18 to 26 to join in on the war efforts. We see Russia right now stationing their troops in the Caribbean islands, getting ready to send off a nuclear war against the United States and England. We also are seeing a rise of issues going on in the Middle East as well. So more news on that. Stick around and stay tuned. Today on this update of the World News Report, we are going to share with you a recent update of events that have been going on. The United States had signed off in allowing for the United States drafting bill to commence forth, and this is going to be very huge, brothers and sisters, because this presents a problem for a lot of people. A lot of people are complaining about this. They don't want to go to war, and we've seen, if you've been watching the videos in Ukraine, they've been taking innocent civilians and throwing them in the vans to be put in the front lines for the war efforts, and a lot of them had said in their videos, if you've been watching, that they don't know what they're doing there, that they don't know what's going on, they just want to go home and just like live a peaceable life. Well, guess what, folks? The same thing is about to happen here in the United States as well. And as we listen to this video, we're just going to go and examine what is going on here with regards to this bill that had been just recently sent out regarding the drafting for a lot of young men and women. And this is not going to be by choice this time. This is going to be by force. So this does present an issue. We're going to look into this video further that will examine this, and stick around and stay tuned.
Millions and millions of Americans being forced into the U.S. military, because right now roughly 45 million people are between the ages of 18 and 26, meaning they could potentially be forced into selective service. Now, I want to break down what's going on here, why millions of people are extremely upset, but actually had a couple phone calls, a handful of emails. People are furious because their kids are now being forced to go fight in other countries and do all this crazy stuff. Well, I'm going to break down what's really going on, how millions of people are about to be impacted, and what we are likely to see over the next few weeks. So I'll break all this down in just a moment. But again, so first off, what exactly are we talking about? How could millions of people be forced into the U.S. military? Well, it's because of a recent bill that was passed by the House of Representatives. It's this one right here. It says, House passes defense bill automatically registering men 18 to 26 for the draft. Now, what you need to understand is that selective service here in the United States currently is if you are between the ages of 18 and 24 and you are a male U.S. citizen, you have to register. It's mandatory, or else it's a felony and you can go to jail for potentially 5 years. Now, do you see this often? No. Have we had a draft recently? No. But here's what you need to keep in mind. The draft bill was passed likely because we are seeing some more tensions across the world. There's a heightened risk that, yes, we could go to war. And one of the things I've addressed over the past year is we are seeing all of our recruitment numbers for the Navy, the Coast Guard, the Marines, the Army, the Air Force, and so much more. Well, all the numbers are down. Even our recruitment for police officers is down. For the FBI, down. Everything is lower than what it's been over the previous years. And obviously, that's concerning. especially when countries like Russia and China and Iran are growing a larger base. And so now we are potentially at risk. But here's what a lot of people were asking me just the other day is, does this bill that was just passed by the House last week, which it happened on like a late Friday afternoon, does this mean that we are reinstating the draft, and so that any day now millions of people could be called into action? Well, the answer is no. We're not reinstating the draft. President Biden is not going to do that right now. But could he do that? Yes. Here's the only reason why a president would actually reinstate the draft. It's simple. If we needed to fill vacancies in some of the military positions that we would not be able to fill through our normal initial recruitment process, that was the only reason why we would go and draft anybody for selected service. Okay? But I want to show you this. Look at this. It says no. Selective Service Registration Bill doesn't reinstitute draft. It says fact check. Well, I want to read you some things. Okay? I want to start with this right here. Look at this. It says while there isn't currently a draft in place, Congress and the President can reinstate the draft and force male citizens to serve in the military in the event of a national emergency or war that all volunteer military can't adequately support. So, what you need to know about the military draft. Well, let's get to that. Because again, like I said, if all volunteer military cannot adequately support our needs, that is the only reason why we would actually have a draft. But again, we're not there, we're far from it. Okay? Now, who needs to register? Well, this is what the current law is. I want to read this to you so you understand where the changes are going to be. It says, who needs to register? Almost all men who are 18 to 25 years old and live in the U.S. must register for selective service. This includes U.S. citizens who live outside the country, immigrants, this is legal permanent residents and undocumented immigrants, refugees and asylum seekers, transgender people who were assigned male gender at birth, and people with disabilities. It says if you are a military veteran or a military reservist, you are still required to register with select service. It says several groups are exempt from registering, such as those currently on active duty, some disabled persons, and those who are incarcerated. Now, again, what you need to keep in mind, and this is a big one because I had a mom, she was a mom of 3, and she wrote an email today saying how she is worried because 2 of her daughters are, one is 17, the other one's 18 years old. The other one I think is like 13 or something. But so 17 and 18, she's worried because I said that this is going to open up the doors for women to be required to register for selective service. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I say this is because one of the things we've seen over the past handful of years is women want the same rights as men. And I'm absolutely for that. You should be paid the same. You should be treated the same, right? There should be no, really no gender roles. But this is kind of one of those things that why are we only selecting men? Well, the reason why we're only selecting men, based off of what history has told us, is because men can't have children. They cannot bear children. So because of that, women were left out of this so that we do not see our numbers, here in the United States, all the people that come in and are born here, if these numbers drop, well, we're screwed. So because of that, that's why women were left out of the draft. Well, because other things as well, but that was years ago, times have changed. But that's what you need to keep in mind. Now, I want to show you this. It says, are women eligible to register for the draft? It says, the law currently requires that only men register for selective service. In the event that law is changed to include registering women, selective service is prepared to expand registration, according to the website. That's what they're saying. Well, interesting. So they're already looking at that. And somebody brought this up today that there's no way they're going to include women, right? There's no way. There's enough men, and there are. But there's also enough men and women. So keep that in mind. Yes, there is enough men to potentially fill the void that could be left in this gap between the volunteer, servicemen and women. But at the same time, we have to treat men and women the same, right? Now, I want to read you one last thing, and then let's talk about it. It says, what if you don't register? It says, according to law, it is considered a federal felony punishable by a fine of up to $250,000 or a prison term of up to 5 years, or a combination of both, if you fail to register with Selective Service. A felony conviction means you lose your right to vote and the right to own, possess, and use a firearm, among other things. Now, let's discuss this. Is this something that we should be worried about? This new draft bill? The answer is yes and no. The one reason why we should be concerned about it is, why are we being asked this? Why is this being passed today? Why are we even talking about it? This has been in discussion for the past handful of months, but why did this pass just this past week? Well, because tensions are high, because our recruitment numbers are low, and we need to be prepared in the event that we have to go to war. Right now, we would not be the powerhouse. We just wouldn't. We would because of some of our military equipment, but not because of the personnel that we have. It's because of all the advanced equipment that we do have, that we do offer, and our allies. That's the only reason why we would actually be a threat or be feared. Not because we have just so many more people that are fighting for the United States. So, are people being forced into the military? The answer is no. You're not being forced into it because there's still no draft, but this draft bill that was just passed, well, many experts say this is highly concerning. So I don't know which direction to go. I don't know which side to really take, because, again, I don't think this is going to pass through the Senate because there's too many poison pills in this bill. But could they rework this and eventually pass it again in the House and send it over to the Senate and get President Biden's signature? Absolutely. But once that happens, that's where it'd be really concerning, is what does Congress see? What does the president know that the rest of the United States does not?
So there you have it, folks. It's not ready yet, but they will eventually come to that breaking decision where they're going to end up forcing your sons and daughters to go out on the front lines to fight this war in efforts to protect the United States and whatnot. And a lot of kids right now are not prepared mentally for this kind of war. A lot of them are being conditioned and brainwashed to these ideologies talking about ceasefires and peace, and this reminds me so much of what has happened in the 1960s to the 70s, and this is a very hard time for a lot of us. And so there has been a leakage with one of the leaders that have spoken about how it could potentially happen within 3 months. So just keep your eyes open and your ears open, and we'll see what happens then. Just pray and never cease praying as we continue to go on forth with this. I just hope and pray that this could be revisited and, whatnot. But with the way that things are going right now, the tensions are getting high. And with that being said, I want to talk to you about the escalation rising up with Russia right now, that is currently stationed their submarine ships over in the Caribbean islands. So long story short in all this, Putin has warned the United States and NATO to back off and to stop sending weapons to the Ukraine. And if they don't do that, then he's going to send basically a message to them and basically to back off. And it's just not looking good, folks, because the problem is that we here in the United States, the Biden administration, along with NATO, keeps poking the bear, and it's only a matter of time before that bear wakes up and gets angry and starts something. So we're going to share this report talking about the issues that are going on with Russia here, that are stationed here in the U.S. And it's not, I wouldn't put it past me either if China is also secretly surrounding themselves alongside the United States as well, considering how close they are to the U.S. on the Pacific coastlines. But for now, we're going to take a look at this clip here so that way we get an understanding of what's going on and why that this draft bill is being passed along. Again, it's not in full effect yet, so that's the good news. The bad news is at some point it will be, but we just don't know exactly when. But potentially, as I said before, based on a leakage, it could potentially happen by September, which is closer to around the timing of the United States elections, which is very intriguing. But I have my personal reasons on that, but I'm not going to say here. But let's just for now take a look at the reports concerning what Russia is up to lately, concerning the issue with the United States, and we're going to take it from there.
Now to the Russians. Military vessels from that country are bobbing in the waters 100 miles from U.S. shores ahead of planned training drills in Cuba. Officials in Havana say Russia's military presence, which includes a nuclear-powered submarine, does not represent a threat to the region. The U.S. was able to assess that the vessels are not carrying any nuclear weapons. The last time Russia held similar drills in the Caribbean was 2019. Officials from both countries say the training is a, quote, normal part of friendly relations, but it is happening just a week after Vladimir Putin suggested he could give weapons to countries hostile towards the United States after Washington approved Ukraine's use of U.S. weapons to strike inside Russia. CBS News national security correspondent David Martin joins me now from the Pentagon. David, what more do we know about these exercises, and what's Russia doing in these waters around Cuba?
I think first and foremost, Vladimir Putin is making a display of his displeasure with the Biden administration's support for Ukraine. And this exercise was in the works before President Biden made that recent decision to lift the ban against using American-made weapons against targets on the ground in Russia. But for 2 years now, the U.S. has been doing its best to keep Ukraine in the fight, and now Vladimir Putin is responding with these exercises. Now, this is not the first time that Russian warships have operated in the Caribbean, not the first time they've made a port call in Havana, but it's just happening with a higher profile. They pulled in today to a 21-gun salute, and then they immediately put out video of the ship's arrival on social media. They're trying to draw attention to this, and they're going to stay here for quite some time. These exercises are supposed to continue through the summer, and as you noted, these are going to be larger than normal. They're going to include long-range bomber patrols along the east coast of the United States, and that's the first time since 2019 that they've done simultaneous naval and air operations. So this is going to be an interesting summer.
And how does the Pentagon, David, respond to this, or how should people think about the fact that this kind of danger is a little close here to the U.S. coastline?
Well, I don't think we should exaggerate the threat here. Two of those ships, the surface warship and the submarine, are designed to carry guided missiles, which on paper could reach targets in the United States. But the east coast of the United States is bristling with naval and Air Force bases, and I would think that anything like that from the Russians would just be very unlikely. I think what is more likely is that the Russians might come closer to the United States than they ever have before, just on this transit down to Cuba from the northern Atlantic. They pass just 30 miles off the coast of Florida. And since a U.S. Navy task force is going to be shadowing these Russian exercises all summer, I wouldn't be surprised to see some kind of run-in between the navies of the two countries.
David Martin at the Pentagon for us. Appreciate it as always, David. Thank you.
So you could see right now that the Russian Defense Ministry has sent off their naval ships right at the coast of Cuba. You can actually take your binoculars if you live in the southern part of Florida, particularly Miami and whatnot. If you go to Miami Beach or whatever and you just face towards Cuba, you can actually see through your binoculars just how close these ships are to Cuba. So how close is too close for comfort? Well, based on the reports, it's pretty close, and they've been preparing themselves and getting ready to execute their missiles, whenever that time comes. I pray that it never happens, but you just don't know when it comes down to Putin, and what's crazy is that there are a lot of things going on here with regards to the naval ships. They can actually reach anywhere in the United States in the East Coast. I mean, they have guided missiles. Now, interestingly so, we had this similar crisis happen in 1960s known as the Cuban Missile Crisis, which had unfolded after the U.S. had discovered launch sites in Cuba for the Soviet ballistic nuclear missiles. Now, over the course of 13 days, the crisis had brought the Soviet Union and the United States dangerously close to a nuclear war. During those time periods, a potential conflict was averted, thank God, when President Kennedy, when the Kennedy administration had reached a deal with the Kremlin for the missiles to be removed from Cuba. However, because of the Biden administration pushing for war every single time, and especially with the war efforts of Ukraine, which is very interesting because Ukraine has been in the news for pretty long amounts of time, and so it's coming to a breaking point, and where Putin is saying, I had enough with you. I'm trying to make peace deal agreements. You people don't want to settle and, take a chill pill. You keep pushing for war. You keep supplying Ukraine with weapons and whatnot. And so I'm going to have to take action into my own hands and do what I have to do. And this is right now presenting a huge problem for the United States at the moment. So we see, with the escalation and tensions of warfare going on, we're seeing the reason why we are getting imposed a draft bill, which can happen at any point in time when they declare national emergency. So this just goes to show you how serious things are getting here in the United States with regards to wars. Now, in other news, in Israel, the IDF has successfully managed to get 4 hostages secured back to Israel, and to God be the glory on that. They rested. This is a footage of Noah Argamani after 245 days from being captive from the October 7th incident in 2023, and this happened during the Feast of Tabernacles. This was like the highest celebration of the feast for the year before a new year began. And so we're going to take a look at this footage. Viewer discretion is advised, just to let you know, but it's nothing too out of the sorts. And so just to let it be known to you, it is a blessing on positive note that 4 hostages had been rescued. Unfortunately, some IDF soldiers had fallen, and in order to sacrifice these individuals to secure them back home safely with their loved ones and family members. So we're going to take a look at this and stick around and stay tuned.
אני לא מתרגשת, אני פשוט מאוד מפחדת מהדרך. פה מעלינו חוזי קודקוד, קיבלת עבור? עוד רגע נשים ואנחנו נהיה עם שני קטנמים להבטיח למרחב עבור. אפשר קודקוד, אני יודע שאני מעולה עליו במשך קרובה עליונה תותח אני אומר? קודקוד לעוצמה, ולוכל מופעל. אני רוצה שתשתהיה רגע לבודד שם מדרום, רק קטנה פקודות. אנחנו בהתבצרות, יש לנו פרחים. אנחנו כרגע בחבירה של כוח צבאי. שוב אחד גירה, אחד הלוחמים לפנינו, אז אנחנו נצד יותר לשלם, ואז אתה לא כתוב. זה דבר חשוב בעולם.
אזרחי ישראל, היום שילמנו מחיר קורע לב נוסף במלחמתנו הצודקת על הגנת המולדת. בצער עמוק, באבל כבד, אני מרכין ראש יחד עם כל אזרחי ישראל ומבכה את נפילתם של לוחמינו הגיבורים. כשהמחיר כל כך כבד, נזכור עבור מה אנחנו נלחמים. אנו נלחמים כדי להבטיח את קיומנו ועתידנו. אנו נלחמים כדי להשיב את כל חטופינו. המלחמה הקשה נכפתה עלינו על ידי אויב מתועב ורצחני. על אף המחיר הכבד והמטלטל, עלינו לדבוק במטרות המלחמה. השמדת היכולות הצבאיות והשלטוניות של חמאס, השבת כל חטופינו, וידעו שעזה לא תהווה עוד איום על ישראל, והשבת תושבינו בבטחה לבתיהם, הן בצפון והן בדרום.
ערב קשה. הערב מסרנו את הבשורה הקשה מכל למשפחותיהם של 8 לוחמי צה"ל שנפלו בקרבות בעזה. בשעות הבוקר המוקדמות, עם השלמה של ההתקפה על החלק הצפון-מערבי של השכונה, כוחות חיל רגלים, שריון והנדסה מחטיבה 401 נכנסו בשיירות רכבי קרב משוריינים למרחב על מנת להתייצב בקווי המגע. לפי המידע שבידינו, בשלב זה, באחד הכלים ההנדסיים בשיירה אירע פיצוץ עז שנגרם ככל הנראה מאמצעי חבלה שהוטמן במרחב או כתוצאה מירי של טיל נגד טנקים. בתוך הכלי המשוריין היו 8 הלוחמים שנהרגו. מתמקדים בהכרעה של הזרוע הצבאית של החמאס. מתמקדים בפירוק חטיבת רפיח מיכולותיה. הכוחות בשטח הורגים כל יום בלחימה מחבלים רבים, משמידים אמצעי לחימה, משגרים ורקטות, ובכך מונעים את היכולת של חמאס לחזור ולפעול כנגד אזרחי מדינת ישראל, כפי שקרה ב7 באוקטובר.
To God be the glory on that note. 4 Israeli hostages who were kidnapped by Hamas on October 7th from the Nova Music Festival. Thank God they've been rescued, and the IDF forces, went out of their way to sacrifice themselves to make sure that these individuals were, safely brought home. So these are the 4 individuals. I'm going to zoom out of this a little bit. Excuse me for that. Hold on. There it goes. So these are the 4 individuals. This is Noah Argamani. This is Almag Mayerjan. This is Shlomi Ziv and Andrei Zohlov. I believe this is her boyfriend who's still in there. Now, interestingly so, she was separated from several of the individuals and put in a different home, if you will, so she was kept okay. She was kept alive. She was kept safe for the most part, away from the others. There's still more hostages, by the way, that are still need to be rescued, but thank God these individuals were rescued and brought home safely. Now, our Argamani became the face of the whole hostage crisis after the harrowing video of her being kidnapped, which was published online on the October 7th incident. Now, the video was posted by the Israeli Prime Minister's spokesperson on a Saturday, which showed Argamani hugging her father as they reunited. And, they said Argamani's friend, Jan Gorjostan, excuse me for mispronouncing, he claims that this was one of the happiest moments of his life, as he and a group of friends had traveled all the way to Tel Aviv to see her. And, it's just truly an amazing experience. But unfortunately, we still have a lot of things to go through in order to rescue the remaining hostages that are still are left in the tunnel systems. We don't know where they're at this point, but this is exactly the very reason why Netanyahu is still trying to do whatever he can do to eliminate Hamas. Keep in mind, the Hamas group is a terrorist group, as well as the Hezbollah, as well as Jihad, as well as Al-Qaeda, and then the list goes on with them. They want nothing more better to do than to annihilate all the Jews. This is their last caliphate, as I said before, and I say again, their last caliphate, their last jihadist movement to eradicate and annihilate all of the Jews. This is a biblical prophecy that has been imposed in the Bible for a very long time. The Lord has spoken about this, and he has shown this through evidential means. And look at what's happening right now. We have a lot of issues going on. This is exactly why Netanyahu is saying no to the peace deal agreements, no to the 2-state solution. Biden keeps pushing for this. Palestine right now doesn't even want this. They don't care for this. They just want to annihilate the Jews altogether so that they could say that they have a place to say and that they could be a part of the whole Muslim Arab nations in the Middle East. And that's why there is a huge problem going on, and a lot of people in the West have no idea with what's going on in the Middle East situation. A lot of them just are chiming in to free Palestine, have very little knowledge on what these people are really about. These people are just Arab tribes that are very nomadic. They're more nomadic tribes. They don't, even their own people don't even want to accept them and take them in. Not even Egypt wants to take them in, and because they know that they're going to start up trouble. That's why they're not taking that chance. So with that being said, this is why Netanyahu is going on forth to push for eradicating the terrorist groups, so that way people can come on home and safely, and people can resume their livelihoods. He wants nothing to do with what's going on per se, but because they got, push comes to shove, it comes to the point in time where, sometimes you just got to take a stand and say, hey, I had enough. Enough is enough. So this is why that the war is continuing on, and all we can do right now is pray for Israel. Israel, pray for the IDF, pray for that many of the whatever civilians are left, that they be brought home. Pray for those who have perished, that their bodies be brought back home to Israel so that they could properly be buried. And, that way, the problems will, decrease potentially, but I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, considering all that is going on right now. And so, but to God be the glory at this moment that we have these 4 individuals safe. They're back home with their families. To God be the glory. Hallelujah. Now, while that's going on, I want to turn your attention to this brave Iranian woman who's exposing the Islamic agenda and the plot against the Western territories and the countries. And this is a very powerful speech she's making here, because she knows what's going on, as I know what's going on. And I pray that for those in the West, in the United States and in England and other Western European territories, I pray you start waking up to the truth regarding this quote-unquote pro-Palestinian protest. It's much deeper than what meets the eye, as I've been trying to warn and tell you people out there. There's a lot more hidden agendas behind this. So please take a listen to what this Iranian woman has said, and this is really powerful stuff. So I hope and pray that you will understand that this is a lot more than just a simple protest. This is a hidden agenda from the Islamic territories that are pushing forth for a caliphate, as I said before. And so with that being said, they're pushing for this radical Islamic regime and in trying to impose it upon the American people, who are very feeble-minded in this area, who have no knowledge of what Islam is about. It is a very dangerous religion in its own elements, and that's why so many Muslims are starting to flee from it. I pray more and more of you come out of this and seek Jesus while he may be found. But in the meantime, we're going to take a look at this and show you what this is really all about. So let's take a listen to what she has to say.
If every single day that you wake up, you are more confused than the day before about the state of this world, this is single-handedly the most important thing that you are going to need to understand if we are going to make it out of this time. What we are all collectively witnessing right now, the spell that has befallen the entire world, this is Soviet propaganda. And I'm going to explain to you where this comes from. This Soviet propaganda is from the marriage of convenience between the atheist radical left and the ultra-religious radical right. The Marxists and the Islamists, okay? The Marxists and the Islamists have joined forces in a covert union to bring about the destruction of the West, and I'm going to explain how and why. So after the collapse of the Soviet Union, the Trotskyites were disseminating this propaganda worldwide to globalize their Soviet revolution. Now, in order to achieve the destruction of the West, the destruction of capitalism, they needed to align with a reactionary force. So they aligned with the Islamists. They saw the Islamists as the reactionary force capable of destroying the West, right? Now, what was required to make this alliance successful is that both sides were going to have to make quick concessions and trade-offs, right? For the part of the Marxist left, they traded off our individual rights. Listen to what I'm saying to you. Our individual rights, our freedom of speech, our freedom of religion, women's rights, anti-discrimination, all of that traded to the Islamists in exchange for that reactionary force that would bring down capitalism in the West. For the Islamist part, they would have to pretend to care about all those things, to sell it to the left, to export that to the left. They would have to pretend to care about anti-racism, anti-imperialism, women's rights. Do you see now why the Islamists, the most racist, anti-women, imperialist force in the entire world, is posturing as the opposite of those things? But here's what's happening now. That marriage of convenience started in America as the fringe left. It didn't just start overnight. This has been here for a long time. It was the fringe. Over time, through radicalization and through propaganda, that fringe left has become the main left. And that is why so many of us who woke up Many people woke up after October 7th, right? They've been pushed out of the left because they don't identify with this Soviet propaganda, which they don't understand what it is. Nobody knows what it is, but they just know these are not the leftist values that we grew up on, right? So it's not us that's changed. It's the fringe that has expanded into the left. But the cracks have now started to show, and these are the things that nobody can make sense of. If these people are pro-women's rights, why are they raping women?
Exactly.
If these people are anti-racists, why do they say they want to kill the Jews?
Exactly.
If these people are anti-imperialists, why do they seek ultra-nationalist goals of taking over not just this land, but the entire region to secure another caliphate?
Exactly.
That is imperialism. This is why you have never seen leftists that have been indoctrinated by the Soviet propaganda work harder in your life to defend rape, to defend sexual assault. Have you ever seen that? Have you ever seen that in your life? Leftists, women's rights advocates and champions defending rape. How do we know it happened? Because you saw the naked bodies being dragged through the streets. You saw the blood. That's not enough for you to understand what's happening. That's indoctrination, where you can see things with your own eyes and not believe what you saw with your eyes, but believe the propaganda that was sold to you. That is called indoctrination. Now, on the Marxist left side, the cracks that you're seeing is that their whole sell was, we are against oppressors and pro the oppressed. We don't believe in all of this class stuff. Well, hang on a minute. You seem to be supporting the Islamists, and they are the biggest classists in the world. They are the biggest oppressors
Yes,
in
they
the
are.
world. And that's why you have never seen the Marxist radical left work so hard to convince you that these are not the oppressors, they're the oppressed. And it defies everything that you see with your own eyes. But wait a minute. What about in Iran? We see what they're doing. No. They're oppressed. They're fighting Western imperialism. Yep, they're oppressed by Western imperialism. Which Western imperialism is happening in Iran? It would be happening if they weren't there. So that's why they need to, because they're oppressed by Western imperialism. You've been duped. Soviet propaganda has never been more successful. And I can tell you how this ends. I can tell you how this ends because there is one example. There is one example in contemporary history where this marriage of convenience between the Marxist left and the Islamist right has been successful. And that time was 1979.
Yeah.
1979 in Iran, the left communist Tudeh party aligned with the Khomeinists, okay, to bring about the revolution that brought in the Islamic Republic. That is how this ends. I need you to wake up yesterday. I need you to pay attention to those feelings in your gut where you justify rape, where you deny that rape happened, when you say anti-Semitism is okay, despite the fact that you've been doing anti-racism work your whole life, despite the fact that you've been doing pro-women's rights work your whole life, that all of a sudden your narrative has switched. You've done a total about-face because the radical left that has bled out, the fringe left that has bled out into the entire left has convinced you that this is the correct narrative, even though it defies everything in your being, even though you wish you could speak out, but you can't because you'll be attacked and ostracized by the left. It is time to take a step that is bigger than you and bigger than us and recognize that if we don't all turn around now, it ends in 1979 in Iran. This is not an authentic state of being. This is Soviet propaganda, and that is why nothing about this world makes sense right now, not even to you who fell for it.
And she's absolutely 100% correct on this. There is a Soviet propaganda that's been going on for a very, very long time. In fact, even Yuri Bezmenov has been warning the United States to look out for these signs because they've been plotting and planning this for a long time too. They've been going around trying to manipulate one generation of people into brainwashing them, turning them against to the baby boomers, the Gen Xers, and so on and so forth. Those who are awakened and sober-minded, those who know what's going on, they're taking a generation of millennials, turning them upside down, flipping them inside out, and turning them against us. And that's why there's so much division and strife among the people. That's why there's so many people who are woke and put on the fringe of this whole left-wing liberalist movement. They have no idea, half of them, what's going on and why they're even there. They're just there because they're just like another, they see everybody doing it and they say, well, if they're doing it, I should do it too. But they have no knowledge of what this whole Islamic caliphate is all about. And this is exactly why people need to wake up, because there is a propaganda to pit people against each other. So why? Because if we were to unite ever at any point in time and we go after the higher powers to be, they'd be screwed. But because that the higher powers to be, the global elite societies, know exactly what they're doing, and at the right time, at the right measure, because they're agents of Satan, they are going on forth to pit us against one another, the feeble-minded, the weak. And this is why we are in such turmoil today. If we don't wake up right now and we don't do something about this, well, guess what? We are going to be in much bigger trouble and in much worse shape than we ever been in human history of events. The Bible has been telling us this all along, and it has been very clear from the very beginning what kind of an agenda is happening and why it is imperative to pay attention to the signs that are happening all around us. I hope and pray that many people will wake up and understand that this is serious business. And while we're making fools of ourselves here in the United States, the enemies are coming right on in, as what it says in the Bible, that they're coming in and they could easily just wipe us out. Because we here in the United States are so divided on so many things, more than what I can imagine. The list is endless. But we need to get it together here in the U.S. We need to wake up to the truth about what's going on here, and we need to stand up and fight for this nation and preserve whatever's left of it and try to make the best out of the worst things that are happening here. But we need to do whatever we can to preserve this nation before it falls apart completely and we become another third world country. So that's all I have for you today, folks. Please stick around and stay tuned for more world news update reports. This is Sister Sonia here at Last Remnant of God's Army. Thank you so much for joining me here on this channel. Stick around and stay tuned. God bless you all, every single one of you, and take care. God bless.